Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for being a part of this podcast. You are listening to Community Reach Podcast, where we dive into issues only to emerge with a better understanding. And today we have a great podcast for you. As you know, Greenville and other places has a lot of evictions. So I wanted to kind of dive into things today to find out. A lot of people don't know what evictions are really about. And I wanted to dive in today to talk about evictions, the process, and how it affects others. So today we have a great guest today who has been through the process. Fortunately, she's never had to be evicted, but she's been so close and had to go through so many things that I wanted her to share her experience with you so that you will know. And today I tried to figure out what would I title this episode. And normally when you think about evictions, it's talk about getting out. The landlord is telling you to get out. So I just made the title of this is Get Out, the Real Life Struggles of Evictions. So today we have Miss Quentoria Jones. Miss Jones,
How you doing, Mr. Watson?
how are you today?
I'm good.
Great, great. I'm so glad to,
Considering the rain and the little thunderstorm and the wind blowing, but I'm
yeah.
good.
Other than that, the sun is shining, right?
Yes, sir.
That is great. Well, I'm so glad to have you on today and to talk about some things. I know this is dear to your heart, and I just thought about you be the best person to talk about this. So, what we're going to do, I'm going to just dive right in. You had a lot of experiences when it came to evictions, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, there's some things that probably was pretty hurtful or scary at the time, too. Correct?
Here.
Okay. So what we want to do, I think your situation is a little different because a lot of times people face evictions, but that's all they do. They face the evictions, but they don't fight for staying where they're at, especially when they're wrongful evictions. Because a lot of your evictions came to the point where they were illegal evictions or wrongfully administered evictions. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
So let's just jump right into it. First thing, I want to disclose the myth about evictions. There's a lot of myths about evictions or people who have gone through the eviction process. What have you heard?
I think the few that I've heard that really bother me is that uh that person asked for it. I don't think nobody ever asked to be evicted or that they brought it on themselves. You did in some cases, some people do because you do have to pay your rent or you will be evicted
Mm-hmm.
in that case or situations in that matter. Or the fact that only people in low income or poverty are evicted, which you and I both know that's not true.
Right, right. Yeah, and that is I've heard a lot of things, first thing when you say low poverty, there's a lot of people who got to have money and get evicted,
Exactly.
they say they're lazy, all kind of things you hear,
Uneducated.
uneducated, don't have a job, um, but that is just totally, like they say, myth, and it's typical of people putting people in that type of category, and we all know that's not true because I know for a fact that you have your degree
I do.
and you work. So you tell us a little bit about how do you put those things to bed whenever somebody's when you hear people say that. What do you say?
Now, me, I'm a little different. I'm very vocal. So when
Okay.
I hear, I'm sorry. When I hear stuff like that, where do you get that from? Or what studies or data, show that? Because I want to know. Show me.
Hmm.
I'm all about the facts
Right.
and the truth.
Yeah.
Or why do you feel that way?
Hmm.
Like, what? I can't even think of the word, but like, what possessed you to like feel or think those things about people? And some of it is just people being, I don't want to say misguided, but misinformed.
Right. Right. And that's
Because
what
what
we.
you see is people from low income poverty areas being evicted, which is not always the case.
Right.
But that's what is shown, that narrative, changing the narrative. That's
Okay.
my thing.
That's good. Good. And you know, and you are the person to do that.
Well,
So,
thank you.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about your situation and how you got in the situation of receiving eviction notices.
Well, this goes back, what, 3 years ago. Simple day, children get ready for school. Long story short, my toilet backed up. I called my landlord to fix the matter, which they attempted to, but then it got into a kind of back and forth. I had two renters insurance policies, one through the renters landlord company, and I had my own personal. And they agreed to redo the entire bathroom, but it all came down to me wanting a whole brand new tub. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to replace the tub. They wanted to replace the towel. And I didn't care about the towel. I cared about the tub because fecal matter had sat in the tub for like 3 days. And I wanted a brand new tub.
Right.
So because of me standing up for myself, I was labeled as confrontational and hard to deal with. So bam, got hit with an eviction notice. That was the
Mm-hmm.
first.
Right.
That kind of stemmed around COVID. So it was kind of dismissed and nothing came of it. But then I got hit with another one like
Mm-hmm.
a year later.
Okay.
Well, actually, I got 5, but I got hit with another one the following year. And at that point, I was over it because it's like, because she said I failed to pay rent. And it's like, I never missed the rent payment. If I don't do nothing, I'm going to pay my rent because I don't play about the livelihood of my babies. And
Right.
she knew that. So it took about another year just to go to court because that was right after COVID. So, like, they had cases that were back all the way up. But I was at home. I was about to get ready to go in for work, and I got a knock at the door, and I seen a sheriff's officer, and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" He was like, "Are you Miss Jones?" I'm like, "Yes, sir." He was like, "You've been served." I'm like, "Been served what?" He was like, "Ma'am, I don't know. I just delivered the paper." So I'm opening this envelope and reading it. And it's like rule to vacate, and I'm like, "What?" Because like I had never been served no eviction paper. I didn't know nothing about it. So I'm calling, went to the magistrate court. They telling me they don't do nothing about it. Like, call this person. So I'm just calling a whole bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow I did get referred to your office.
Mm-hmm.
And I did talk to you and I found out about the 14-day notice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got referred to legal aid. I cannot remember who referred me, but somebody referred me to legal aid.
Mm-hmm.
And I got connected to an attorney there, it's free, which people
Mm-hmm.
don't realize that. And I am very grateful still to this day for legal aid because if it wasn't for me having representation, I probably would have won my case, but a lot of people don't
So
because go
go ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. I'm
Well, I
sorry.
was just gonna say, people think that just because me and the landlord had a verbal, conversation or interaction, that's proof in court. Well, she said this and I said that. It don't go like that in court. It's not what you say or what she said. It's what you can prove. And if you don't have that documentation, you will get evicted. And in my case, that's what saved me. I'm not just going by phone conversations. Okay, so after I get off the phone with her, I'm sending her an email to recap everything that we just talked about on the phone. And I guess she didn't realize that I had done that or that I knew about that. So in my case, that's what helped me and saved me.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned legal representation. So you feel like that is a major part of having to go to court?
Most definitely. If you do not know the law, they will run circles.
Hmm. We get a lot of cases here, people having to go to court and stuff. And that's one place I do recommend, when they want legal, help. I do recommend, South Carolina legal aid. But I tend to think about, I've seen what happens when they do not have that aid. And I think it's just the ideal that a lot of times when you go into court, um, and you don't have anybody there, you're already at a disadvantage. Would you say?
A very big one. I've sit in court with close friends, close family, and just, just sitting in there, because I was told I can come sit in there any Tuesday or Thursday and just
Hmm.
listen to cases. And you'd be surprised how many people just show up in there with nobody, no documentation, no nothing. I hate to kind of go off a little bit, but this just sitting on. If you do not pay your rent, you will be evicted. You will.
So it doesn't matter how much documentation you have, paying the rent, that is part of your lease. That's
Yeah,
the
if you
that's
don't read it, you will be like these lease. I got hit with like 5 lease violations,
hmm.
which wasn't even, according to my lease, wasn't even violations. And my lease at that time was like 55 pages,
Wow.
which thank God I read every last one of them and had a copy of it, because you and I both know in some cases, some landlords are not the best, and like they might, manipulate certain things and systems. So it's good to get a copy of everything. I don't care what it is, a
Yeah.
rent receipt, your lease, a lease violate, everything right then and there. Not when they send you an eviction paper and then you, oh, well, I need my lease. No, you should have been had that.
Mm-hmm. And your lease is like your playbook. That's how you know what you're getting, right? Um, that's you said something that was very interesting, that landlords may try different things. Have you ever had a scare tactic tried? Where somebody tried to scare you into something, far as tell us a little bit about that. I know that's a little off the thing, but
So I got hit with the eviction. So
mm-hmm.
after that, the first one. So after that was dismissed, then I started getting hit with lease violations.
Mm.
So they was like, oh, okay, we can't get her this way. So we gon' well, you didn't. I had firewood in my yard one day, so they
Mm-hmm.
sent code, to it, and I'm like, that's just firewood. It's not rubbish. It's firewood for my fireplace that I had. And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, oh my god. He wrote a note and was like, it's nothing. Send it to so I could send it to the landlord. She couldn't go that way, so she went, another way. I've even had them go so far as to call Piedmont Natural Gas and have my gas turned off, which is my heat.
Wow, wow. And
And
was
this
it?
was after I moved
And this is in the wintertime too.
in the wintertime.
And they actually turned it off.
They were coming to turn it off.
Oh.
And I
Hmm.
seen the chart and I'm like, I paid my bill. And I had to call my attorney at the time and he had to call his supervisor and like, what are you doing? And he was like, he told us, me and my attorney, that he got a call from that landlord stating to come and turn. But I'm like, she doesn't have like ownership to do that. My bill is not due. I still reside here, which they didn't, but I've had, yeah, a lot.
So that again, the attorney helped you.
Yes.
Hmm.
Because at that time, I feel like if I didn't have an attorney, I would have been bullied.
Okay, I got you. And that is something that happens when it comes to some landlords and some tenants. They try to bully you into doing certain things that that they should not be doing. But so that is really good, because so I guess having an attorney is really important, huh?
Oh, most definitely. And then it's free. It don't even take 5 minutes. The intake process is not even 5 minutes, if that.
Okay, okay, I got
And
you.
it's free.
Yeah, yeah, because I think they work on income base there for
Hmm.
situations like that. Yeah. So, but that's really good that you were able to do that. Now, you went to court how many times?
Twice.
Twice. And how many times did you win?
Twice.
Okay.
I won both cases.
And you wouldn't have
So
won without having representation, huh?
I feel like I would have, but I just feel like it made it a little. Well, I can't say less stressful because the eviction process is stressful in itself. But
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like it took a lot of the burden off of me, like the having to prove, myself. Even though I had the documentation, but I'm not a lawyer. I studied some of it. I did go to school for criminal justice,
Mm-hmm.
but he knew the terminology and the codes and bills and
Mm-hmm.
things in that nature that I didn't. that I wasn't aware of.
Question: was your landlord or the representative of your landlord, could have been your management people, whoever, were they shocked when they saw you walk in with the lawyer?
Oh, very. And it wasn't even, this was before we walked into the, before, because like I said, it took us almost a year to get to court. So when they sent it, and that's my other thing I want people to really, really take serious. When they come knock on your door and you sign that paper saying that you've been served, your time starts that day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something you just throw to the wayside and ignore and deal with. And like, I got time. You don't have time because your time starts that day they knock on your door and give you that paper.
And that's
So
10,
you need to take heed and do what you need to do right then and there.
right. And it's 10 days that you have to actually make a decision
And appeal.
and appeal. Okay. Yeah.
And after them 10 days, I don't care who you boo-hoo to. If you got small children, if you're disabled, if you don't have nowhere to go, they will sit your stuff out.
Mm,
They will.
right. Right. And that is the process. You get to, you have to answer that 10-day
And it's
notice.
legal
And yeah, and you
after
have to,
those 10 days if you don't appeal.
that's right. You get what they call a writ of ejection. And therefore, that's when the judges go ahead and have them say everything out. Um, you was talking about children. Um, a lot of times people don't realize the effect that that children receive because and you're a single parent, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're basically having to do everything. And you're trying to take the stress off your kids by probably not even letting them know half the stuff you go through, right?
Mm-mm.
So
I did
how
not want them to know that.
exactly. So but eventually their children are going to feel something is going on. So can you tell me a little bit about what type or what are some of the things you saw in the changes you saw in your children as you were going through this process, or did they realize that something was happening?
Initially, no, because it was like, come on, I told you I done had 5 since I
Mm-hmm.
had been in there, and I stayed there for 4 years. So I
Mm-hmm.
had 5, so it was like we'll pack, then unpack, so that it was kind of like the norm for us in their eyes. So it's like, oh, they done sent mommy a letter and made mommy mad, so we're gonna have to put our stuff in boxes, and then we're gonna have to unpack it again
Mm-hmm.
because whatever. But I did notice, emotional, mental. My youngest 2 were real young at the time, so they really didn't understand. But I think it affected my oldest out of everybody
Mm-hmm.
because he was in middle school at that time, and we stayed close by his middle school. So and like how you said, scare tactics. She would come and set a for rent sign in my yard.
Hmm.
If we have a verbal, back and forth, because like I said, I'm very vocal. I'm gonna speak my piece. I'm very respectful, but I'm gonna speak my piece. I
Hmm.
don't think she liked that. So if we had her interaction that she didn't like, she would come and set the for rent sign in my front yard.
I
And
got
my
you.
son friends on their way to school would see it. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say he got bullied, but he kind of got teased like, oh, y'all getting put out and things in that nature and stuff like that. And then I did speak about it in an article. So some of I don't think his friends read the article, but their parents probably did and might have spoke to them about it. So they would go to school and tease him about it.
Hmm.
And the other thing was the emotional. He became depressed because in the midst of that, he ended up having to leave his school at the last semester of that year, which was his 8th grade year.
Hmm. Okay.
And I had already spoke with the principals at all my children's school who were very like vital in us getting through, that, because I know a lot of parents don't feel like schools are a safe space, but they can't be a safe space if you don't communicate with them. And I thank God every day for my children's school,
Mm-hmm.
they principals, they staff, because they were very helpful.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
But
Uh,
they let them stay at the school. But according to the school district, when you move into another neighborhood, you have to go to your assigned school.
uh,
So my son had to leave his last semester, his 8th grade year, which of course, I'm gonna fight and advocate for my children if I don't do nothing else, which he ended up having to go back, but he didn't go to school for like 2 weeks because he was depressed. Like, we already having to leave our home. Now
Mhm.
you're trying to make him leave his school with his friends and the people who he know. Like, that was the only stable place that they had, which was their school environment.
Yeah.
So that's why I said I don't think people realize just the impact that evictions have on families.
Yeah. And going back to situations to where you're getting evicted, a lot of times it can be situations that you went through with your landlord far as illegal evictions. But now there were some times that certain changes in your life caused you to not to get evicted too, right? Because I think you was telling me your fiance had
At that time, which been almost 8 years ago, I was engaged. He had a car accident and suffered a brain injury.
mm-hmm,
So, because people are like, well, why is she a single mom with 4 kids? Like, that's not something I asked for. That was just something I was forced into
right, right.
by him having that car accident and suffering a brain injury.
And that changed your income too. So you could, it was
All
hard.
of it. It changed my whole life
Yeah. So
and that of my children.
so
And that's why I
they
say people don't understand, we all have a story.
exactly.
And sometimes it's not just black and white. Sometimes it's a little gray in there,
Mm-hmm.
because all situations are not the same.
Right, right.
And I'm biased to that because I always assumed before it happened to me that if I heard about a person getting evicted, oh, they didn't pay their rent. That's why they getting put out.
Hmm.
And not even realizing you can pretty much get put out for anything.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
is it legal or is it just no? But they still can do it.
And the only way to combat that is know your rights.
Know your rights. And I tell people that they look at me crazy, but I tell them all the time, know your rights. Read your lease from front to back.
Right,
I
right.
don't care if it's 100 pages, read it.
And I think a lot of times, and you may can tell me, a lot of times a landlord can be intimidated in situations where that person may know their rights.
Oh,
And
most definitely.
yeah.
I was I don't want to say um what's that word? I want to say like counsel, but like they put a lot of bad stuff out there about me. I was up so after the eviction, I can't keep going through this with you. You done got me 5 evictions in 4 years. I ain't never
Mhm.
been put out, but you keep saying I can stay here. This is
So this is
toxic.
the same place?
The same place.
5 evictions from the same
5
place.
evictions in 4 years. But you keep telling me, but you renew my
Wow.
lease every year and then say I'm a good tenant.
Wow.
But you keep doing so now at this point, after we won the last case, I told my attorney, I gotta get away from them. Like, cause I'm sorry, but y'all gonna see me on a mug shot because my last straw was like my children. I'm dead serious. Like, and
Uh-huh.
those are my exact words.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to bother me, but now you're affecting my children because when we went through that eviction, we were living out of boxes, literally. We couldn't put up a tree. This was during the holidays.
Mm.
Like, I wasn't able to buy my kids Christmas. I thank God for my kids. Like I said, they school and they after school because
Yeah.
they were very helpful during that time because I was out of my mind. Like, I became depressed. Like, I couldn't do it. So I'm putting in these applications to move. And of course, when you try to move, they got to do a referral from your previous landlord or prior
Oh.
landlord. So they telling them I'm confrontational, I'm combative, I'm threatening. I'm 4'11". Like, who am I a threat to?
Mm.
Like, like seriously. And I'm telling the judge that's in the court, like, seriously, look at me. Like, would you be threatened by me? Like, for real. And even if I raise my voice, like my voice squeaky, so who is that gonna threaten? Now, like I told her, am I passionate and does my voice, go up? Yes, because you're not just affecting me, you're affecting my children, their education, their
Mm-hmm.
mental health. And this is not no game no more. This is not funny. And I don't
Right.
want to stay here. But they would tell other landlords that I was combative, I was confrontational. I had people who didn't even like me, who didn't even know me, based off of things they heard from that rental company.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that until a lady came up to me. I did a speech about evictions one day, and she was like, she asked me a few questions. I was like, yes, ma'am. She was like, oh my God. She was like, I did not know they did that to you. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she was like, I prejudged you based off what they told me about you.
Right. And you get a lot of that because it's interesting that they say they don't want you there, so they evict you, but they make it hard for you to go anywhere else too.
And they
Um,
made it hard for a long time because I tried to leave.
yeah, and they keep letting you stay there. That's the funny part. And you've been there how many years before
I
you
was there
actually?
4 years.
4
Would have
years.
been 5, and I wasn't my intention when I moved there because that was after the car accident and all that happened with my children's father. So the goal was for us to get a fresh start. It was a good community. It had good schools. I had awesome neighbors. Like it was a village. It was
Hmm.
our chance to start over. And I saved money,
Right.
because I wanted to be a homeowner. And that wiped all of that out.
Mm. Mm,
Because I
mm,
had to
mm.
take my savings that I saved for 4 years, using that on application fees, 50, 60, $70 application fees. And these people taking my money, knowing they're not going to rent to me. And it
Right.
wasn't until another landlord was like, Miss Jones, ain't nobody going to rent to you. And I'm like, why? And he was like, you got all these evictions. And I'm like, no, I don't. I ain't never been evicted. And he printed it out and showed it to me.
Right.
And my mouth dropped because I'm like, no, I went to court. I won. And
Exactly.
I called my attorney, and that's when he informed me that in the state of South Carolina, once they file an eviction, whether you win, lose, draw, it stays there indefinitely. Never go away. Because people, I keep hearing this too. No, it drop off in 7 years. No, it don't. It
Yeah.
don't go nowhere.
So every time you go and you're taking baggage with you that you didn't even want.
It did. And shouldn't even have. I won.
And I should say, you're not taking it with you. It precedes you before you get there.
So I had people prejudging me based off because when you're a landlord and you see this paper, you don't know me. You don't know my story. You don't know nothing. You just see what you see on paper. Oh, rule to vacate, rule to vacate, rule to vacate. Oh God, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You ain't looking at the dismiss, dispose. They don't care about none of that.
So, question right there: how do you think you could combat that for someone? If you're saying someone has that, and especially if they want it like you did, how do you think someone could combat that when they're going to another place to get it? I mean, you think a letter stating that,
It don't matter because I walked around with a manila folder this thick with all my cases showing that I won. Judge ruled in favor of the defendant, unjust, unruly, whatever the situation was for whatever case it was, they weren't trying to hear it.
mm,
It
mm,
was won, and that's where I'm at now. I had 2 weeks to get out because I had put in my notice. I couldn't take it. I had to go. And I had 2 weeks left to find a place. And at that point, I just told my mama, look, I might have to come stay with you. I'm gonna put my stuff in storage. I told my best friend, when mama get on my nerves, I might have to come spend the night with you because her house wasn't big enough for me and 4 kids.
right, right,
And I love my mama, but so I'm be house hopping. She was like,
right.
that's fine. I was looking for a storage. And my uncle girlfriend at the time, she was like, this lady got a house, for rent. Let's go talk to her. I'm like, she not gonna rent to me. She was like, girl, come on. I was on my uncle's house, like on his couch crying. Like
Mhm.
I devastated.
Right,
And
right.
he was like, you got this. We went, we viewed it, and I explained my story to her, and she grabbed my hands and she said, baby, God told me to bless you. And she said, I'm gonna let you move in my house. And she did. And when I moved in, this the crazy part, how you said, scare tactics. I got my lights transferred here.
Mm-hmm.
The landlord called and had my lights transferred back to that house.
What?
So when I moved here, I didn't have power. So she told me when I called her, she told me that I couldn't get my lights disconnected from there until they got a new tenant. And that I had
Really?
to keep it on there. So of course, I had to call my attorney and like, look, can you she done got my lights turned out from here. He had to call and fix that, which they took almost a week to transfer my power back here. So then
Because
I had to put a code on my account. Like it was crazy. But the landlord left, got the lights turned on here in her name for me. Cause I explained the situation to her. But yeah. So I done been through a lot.
and so not only did you go through the eviction process, you went through harassment
Yeah.
afterwards. That's crazy. That's crazy. But it's real. It is a real struggle. It is a real struggle. Wow. Mm.
Cause it affected me like mentally, like I say, emotionally. Like I don't like getting emails.
Hmm.
Because like she would harass a mail. Like if I see something coming from my informed delivery, I get like anxiety off automatic. And like people like they don't like when people call me say, "Oh, I got something to tell you," and I might have done this to you a couple of times. I'm like, "Is it good or bad?" Because like, that's why I do that because of the harassment that I went through for all those years.
So it kind of gives you one of that shell shock or situation to post traumatic syndrome or something, right? Yeah, you
I had
always.
to prepare myself for it, but and that, like I said, that was 3 years ago.
Wow,
And you
wow.
would think that I have a place because a lot of people do
Mm,
get evicted. I didn't get evicted. I do have a victory, but I don't think people realize, like I said, the impact, the after effect. And that's
right.
when we was talking about the fight, flight, or freeze. When
Hmm.
it happened, I was in fight mode. I'm trying to make sure me and my kids have a roof over our head.
Yeah.
And then I went through the flight, and then I went through the freeze.
Hmm. And you know, it's just interesting. Everybody, fortunately, and you can still say you never had to be put out. You left there on your own
Left on
because you
my
was
own
tired of the.
willingly. And they Miss Jones, you don't have to leave. We're not putting you out. You served me with an eviction notice, but you want me to stay so you can send me another one next year? Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, that is so wow. Hmm. So, and why do you think your story is important to get out?
My story is important to get out because I want people to realize that an eviction is not just a piece of paper. It's not. It is, but it's not. It's more to it. And I'm not saying that because some people do deserve to get put out. I
Hmm.
understand that because when I went through mine, I had I can't even think of the word, but it was I want to say like a hate because that's a strong word, but like a dislike toward landlords
Okay.
until I had a conversation with my current landlord and she explained to me some situations she went through and why she had to evict some of her prior tenants. And it just kind of changed and then sitting on discussion panels and stuff like that, it kind of changed my perspective. Like, all landlords are not bad. It's just like all tenants are not bad. We all have our individual story.
Right.
But I feel like it's important to get out because I think everybody, not just tenants, landlords, everybody need to understand the impact that that little paper has on families and especially our children.
Mm, that is so
You
true.
you hear so many cases because I serve on SIC boards at my children's school of kids who are getting labeled with behavior issues and things like that. And I've had to speak and attest to this in a lot
Hmm.
of our, meetings and things. Well, that child don't have a behavior issue. They're acting out because their mom sleeping in their car or they
Right.
had to sleep at their cousin's house because they got evicted, and then they don't want to come to the school and tell you because, of course, they're mandated reporters.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's sad, but it's true. In the Black community, schools are not safe spaces. You know, as a kid, you grew up, your mom told you better not go to that school and tell that teacher nothing that's going on. Whether it's domestic violence or they ain't got nothing to eat or whatever it is. You don't tell them nothing or they gonna come take you from me.
Mm.
So I
Right.
just want people to realize that it's serious. And instead of just looking at a kid or a parent, for that matter, that like what they say, like what's wrong with you? What happened?
Gotcha. Gotcha. Hmm. That's pretty deep there. So, well, that's some pretty interesting stuff. And I'm taking away a lot of things from that. First thing you want to make sure if you get an eviction, get representation.
Act on it
That's
immediately.
immediately. Other thing is evictions don't just hurt you, it hurts the kids. And
In our community, because they lead to homelessness.
right. Um, it's really interesting because South Carolina has the highest amount of evictions in the United States. They have over 284 filings of evictions per day.
You said 200 to who?
284 filings. That don't mean everybody got evicted, but
Oh,
there's
I know that. That they went
evictions
to the magistrate court
that
and put it
over
in.
284 a day.
Mm.
Mm-mm.
So I
And
can
like
only imagine how many people get evicted a day.
yeah, and some end up homeless. You some places you go to places like you might go to Walmart and you see cars just parked there under a tree, and you like, what is all that stuff in there? Well, that's their house now because they were evicted and they have nowhere to go. So as the eviction rate rises, so does the homeless rate, right? In fact, we talked about that one in my last podcast about homelessness. But this is just a precursor to homelessness is the evictions, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, the other thing that I took away from it, yes, some if you don't pay your rent, okay, you will be evicted because landlords have obligations too.
They
They have
do.
to make payments, and nothing is, although they may have a big heart. And I ran into situations where landlords try to keep that person there as long as they could, try to
Mm-hmm.
work with other agencies to get their rent paid. But then if you don't pay your rent, that is going to happen. Am I right?
Most definitely.
Okay. Well, Miss Jones, it's been a pleasure having you on today, and you have brought us a lot of good information. And just to thank you for being so open with everything. Now, it's one thing I did remember. I talked to you a while back, and you was telling me before, when we start talking about this, you had a saying that you adopted from Bishop Tutu. Am I right?
Yes.
And could you read that because I thought that was just such a amazing saying, and it means a lot.
Well, it was a quote from Desmond Tutu, and it says, there comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. And that just stuck with me because we all know evictions is an issue in Greenwood, South Carolina.
Mhm.
But we need to find like why, the solution.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, with that being said, I appreciate you being on today. I appreciate you guys joining us for this podcast. It has been a very informative podcast. And I just wanted to say if you feel you've been discriminated against or if you're facing illegal evictions, um, you have the please make sure you know your rights. Call us, here at Greenville County Human Relations. We can help you. One of the things we do when it's situations that needs legal help, we refer you to an attorney so that you can actually have that, because we do know if you go to an eviction process or go through the eviction process and have to go through the hearing, you have a better opportunity to win, or just have a better opportunity when you have legal representation. Um, so many times I've seen people that didn't have that, and they're just like deer in the headlights when the judge. And you got to remember, the judge has no other choice but to follow the rules of the law. So, and he's looking at what's in the lease. So if you're not reading your lease, you've already behind. And the judge just basically said, I'm sorry, but it's not written. You don't have any documentation. So therefore I have to, agree with the landlord. And
Where
I've
they say
seen it
it ain't what you
happens.
know, it's what you can prove.
There you go. And that's so many times I've seen that. So again, if you feel like you've been evicted or you feel like you're going through an eviction, call Greenville County Human Relations. We can help you. We can get make sure you know the process. And we want to make sure that you're not discriminated against. When it comes to fair housing, there's 7 protected classes. You can be discriminated by race, color, familiar status, religion, sex, disability, or national origin. If you feel like you've been discriminated by any of those, please give us a call also. I want to thank you again for joining our podcast, Community Reach Podcast. My name is Martin Watson. I have been your host, and this is Miss Quentoria Jones. I thank you again, and I just for disclosure, any findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in the material are those of the author, okay? And do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we want to thank you again. Please take the time, join us, subscribe to our podcast. We would love to have you. Again, Ms. Quentoria, thank you. Thank you. And with that being said, thank you guys for joining Community Reach Podcast, and we'll see you next time with more good information that you can use. Have a wonderful day.